Join us and unwind with a good book. Welcome to Relaxing Reads.
Hi, I'm Deb in Halifax.
Hey, it's Simone in Vancouver.
Hi, it's Tanya in Edmonton.
In today's episode, we are so excited to talk to the author of What Wild Women Do, which was our latest read, Karma Brown. Deb is going to give us a quick recap on what the book is about. Deb?
What Wild Women Do by Karma Brown is about 1970s feminist Eddie facing the costs of loss and autonomy strives to create a better future for women at her Adirondacks camp. The other woman, Rowan, an aspiring screenwriter of today, makes a shocking discovery that sets her on a course of rewriting her own story. It's lives that interweave as two women in very different circumstances go on journeys of self-discovery. There are touching moments about women's empowerment and so much more.
So much more and so many questions. A perfect time to chat with Karma. Hi, Karma. How are you?
I'm good, Simone. How are you doing?
I am great. Joining me, we have Deb and Tanya. And sorry we're a little late. We just were talking about your book and we couldn't stop.
No worries at all.
We absolutely love the book, Karma. This is Tanya, and there are so many things that we want to discuss. I mean, you're writing about feminism. You're writing a lot about nature. You're writing about sort of, the 70s, which is very pure and I can't think of the word, but you're making that against our society with YouTube and constantly having to be on social media. And I feel like there's an interesting link there between the two worlds. Which I found fascinating, and I read in the back of the book that you penned this novel with sort of as a love letter to your 1970s childhood. Can you tell us about that? About how this novel evolved?
Yes, I am a 70s baby. This is how I got my name Karma, because my parents were hippies, and I grew up on a farm, sort of in the middle of nowhere. So I had that very as you were saying, sort of this pure time in the 70s, I had that kind of upbringing where my mom was, baking homemade bread, and we had pet chickens, and just in this idyllic childhood. And one of the things that I had an opportunity to do as a kid was go to a place called Camp Sagamore in the Adirondacks. And it's the Vanderbilt sort of great camp. And that is what I based the camp story on. Yeah, so it was the coolest place to go as a kid, especially because, we stayed in Gloria Vanderbilt's cabin, and it was rustic.
Wow.
Very luxurious from, the time, from when it was first created. And so I had that just sort of interesting experience, and I was young, right? So this is all through the lens of a 7-8-year-old who had the chance to go and just go in the woods and be with nature and see this camp and imagine the people who lived there before. And those great camps are now being used more as conservation education. And so you can still go. You can go and visit. There are no phones. There's no Wi-Fi, no cell service. So it's really a step back in time. And I would have loved to have gone again when I was researching the book, but it was COVID, so I couldn't make my way down there. But that camp inspired me, and my childhood of being this free-range child of hippies, with just all this freedom to roam and explore. We weren't even really allowed to watch television. So I grew up in that space, and I have a teenage daughter now, and I feel very conflicted about social media and just the pull of our attention. I guess I'm not even conflicted anymore. I'm happy about, that pull that it has on our lives. And I wanted to contrast those two things.
You definitely did that because we felt it between the two, from 2021 to 1970. How did you incorporate the idea of the mystery? Because, when Simone and Deb and I were reading this book and we saw those excerpts of this is Camp Calloway established in this time. And, we actually thought that these were real people. I had to go online to go, did Eddie Calloway, did she disappear? Is she still gone?
We actually then that I got you on that one, you thought
you did.
Real. Yeah.
You did. How did you incorporate that mystery, that
I was just real. So there was I'm trying to remember his name. Oh my gosh, it has escaped me right now. Fern. It was in the U.S. and he is this eccentric millionaire or billionaire maybe, who buried a hidden treasure, and in the woods, like down in the U.S. and had said to people, like, go out and find it, go explore, try to find it. Here's some clues. Forrest Fenn, that's his name. And so for years, people were chasing after this great treasure that he had buried somewhere. And there were, whole communities that were dedicated to trying to find it. And so I read an article about that, and I was like, oh, I love that idea. I love the idea of someone burying something for people to go and explore and have these great adventures to find. And there was a lot of controversy, like, did he actually put a treasure out there, or was it just a point to get people out into the woods and into nature and reconnecting that way? So I knew I wanted to put a similar type of thing into the story, but make it, more connected to Eddie and her feminist teachings and leanings, and, wanting to create that adventure for the women who came to her camp. And we're exploring, we're having these unique experiences and these hopefully quite transformative experiences.
Yeah, like you said, we really were Googling and looking up all this information. That's such a neat idea to have this mystery. And even to the end, it had us guessing, like, such a great cast of characters. Obviously, there was Rowan and there was Eddie, but even the other characters that came in, like, with the mystery there, I was like, what do Aiden and Jessica have to do with this? Or what's going on with the people that she's, near and dear and close to on the camp? With the characters, are any of these inspired from people you've met in real life, maybe during your times at the camps? Or how did you kind of come up with the different characteristics for some of them?
Yeah, they just grew out of my brain. They're not based on anyone I know. I think with Rowan and Seth, when I was deciding to do a YouTube couple, I spent a lot of time watching YouTube couples. And, the ones who do the different trends, and, in some cases, they've been doing this for years and years. This is their job. They get married online. They have children online. They parent online. And so I spent a lot of time watching those couples just live their lives out online. And so they, it's sort of like amalgamated all those couples into Rowan and Seth. But outside of that, Eddie just grew really organically for me. I just sort of had this vision of her with the kerchief around her neck, and a contrast of, there are parts of her that are very, very feminine, with the lipstick and the hair, sort of holdovers from her socialite life. And then other parts of her that are just rugged and wild. And she just became this real life person to me, as I was writing her. And sometimes even now, I mean, I've gone back and I've had to read certain elements when I was doing book promotion, and the very end where there's the list of, what makes a wild woman, what do wild women do, that she's written. And when I wrote that list in one shot, I did not edit it. And I really feel like sometimes I read those and I think, yes, that is it, Eddie. And then I remember, no, Eddie's not real. This came out of my brain, but I feel like she's real. She was with me through this book, and I'm sure lots of authors say this, but she feels like a real person to me.
Oh, she absolutely does. Yeah, that list, enjoy life, trust other women, be bold. I love your brain. I think we all love your brain. That came out of your brain, this whole story, all these stories.
Yeah.
And I think I have a better appreciation for feminism, women empowerment. I think every time we get together to talk about books, but anytime you get together with women, if you had a hard day or you're just thinking differently, you're being brought into something that is sometimes hard to describe outside circles. But I think it's quite wonderful. And the strength in these characters, you really sucked us in. So I think that the whole self-discovery, it's it could be, part mystery, part journey, but also part self-help book.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, Eddie was sort of a self-help character for me because I was turning 50 as I was writing the book. And so a lot of the issues around aging and perimenopause and, they're briefly touched on in her timeline, in many ways because aging was not discussed in a positive way at that time, right? And women are mostly ignored once they reach a certain age, past childbearing years, as everything starts to fade. But I really feel like women are coming into like their absolute power just after 50. I see it in people I know who are older than that, and I just think there's so much wisdom that comes, this quiet wisdom. So I wanted to be heavy-handed in some ways on that, that element of community of women, and because it's like I don't want to be subtle about this. I think that women are amazing and are undervalued, especially as they age. So it was important to me to have that element come through with Eddie in that story, and with Jess too, because Jess provides some of that for Rowan in the present day timeline as well. She's sort of a conduit between Eddie and, in the past and the present.
Yeah, it's interesting how, you're talking about Eddie and aging, and I feel like she had this amazing glamorous life, but, it's a life that a lot of us cannot connect to. But even as I age, and we had this conversation earlier, like how she did her hair, she did her lipstick, but she didn't want to shave anymore, and she loved that her body was a little bit softer. Like there's that appreciation for that when you get older. It's like, yeah, you could go work out for 2 hours a day, or you could just, come into that acceptance of your body. And I think that does come with age, and that's a beautiful thing because, there's this talk of anti-aging, but we should be pro-aging. And as long as you're healthy, like you should, there's a little more body acceptance. But again, you don't learn this until you get older. So
you don't, because you don't have to know it. And then you have to know it. And then you're like, oh, okay, this is a new phase. This is the next iteration of who I am and how I want to be in the world. And in some ways, things get quieter. I've found that anyway, is that a lot of the stuff that I worried about 15 years ago, I don't really worry about now. I may have other worries, but there's a peacefulness that comes if you're sort of willing to look for it, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think I'm in my 50s as well, and Karma, you mentioned, how at some point you kind of feel invisible, and I'm not really where I want to be. I feel like I'm getting there, but when I go out and about, I do feel kind of invisible. Like I just feel like this person that nobody looks at. I don't know, because I'm not young and hot, or I'm not, a senior. I'm sort of in this.
You are to us, Tanya.
Oh, you're hot.
but anyway, to that point, it was interesting. My boyfriend, who had brought up a coworker, and I gave them a station tour here, and then he said to me afterwards in the evening, he said, "Oh, Z thought you were pretty," and then I said, "Did he think I was interesting?" To me, that is more important.
Yes.
Like I think as we age, I think sort of some of the beauty that comes from women, because we're all women, is that you carry around with you inside your knowledge and all the things that you've been through and sort of your self-acceptance. And I think that is power. And I think that you do exude that as you get older. So it's not about the outside cover anymore. It's what you are projecting from within, and that's where the attraction is, I think. And I think wise women or wise people are amazing to me. I just love the depth of character, and I think that's all where we hope to get to. And I think that's where Eddie is.
We hope we have the chance to live and to enjoy that time. I think there's like this amazing, when you can fly under the radar a little, when you don't get noticed the same way, there's so much power in that, because it allows you to move about the world without being confined by being viewed for how you look on the outside. I mean, not entirely, of course, right? You don't get to escape that, I don't think, as a female, no matter what age you are. But there is just this, oh, okay, well, what else do we care about here? What else is important? And, two things can be true at the same time. I mean, Eddie loved the femininity of her hair and her lipstick, and she liked how she felt when she had that painted on her face. But she also loved the freedom of making decisions about what she was willing to do in terms of beauty standards and not anymore. So she was like living both of those things simultaneously. And I think that is something that our society fails to see, is that the two things can be true at the same time. You can be pretty and you can be smart and you can be aging and all these things can be true at the same time.
Yeah. Now, Karma, one of the main characters outside of Eddie and Rowan is nature. You've got the trees nourishing each other. You've got the couple that's living off the grid, the bird watching. Where did all that kind of come from? The idea, are you a bird watcher, or how does that all come together?
Now. And I became a bird watcher. It just happened so suddenly where, those jokes you see online where it's like you're just carrying on with your life, and then one day you're like, oh, is that a tufted titmouse at the bird feeder? And it's just all of a sudden you're fascinated and watching the bird feeders and setting out more bird feeders. I grew up in the woods, and that was really the foundation for my childhood. And then I went to a big city and lived there for years and loved that. But as I'm aging again, like as I'm kind of going into that next block of my life, I love being in nature again. It just is the most relaxing and grounding place for me to be. And the birds, during COVID, while everyone was so sad about being apart, I was actually quite in my happy place because, it went on for a little too long, but I was like, okay, great. I'm an introvert, and now I'm allowed to just go out in the woods and be alone. And this is perfect for me. So I became, much more connected, I think, to nature, spending a lot more time outside. And yes, the birds. I've become obsessed with the birds. I have the Merlin app. I use it very regularly. If you don't have the Merlin app and you're into birds, you need to get this app. It's spectacular because it allows you to. Do you have it? Do you know what this is? The Merlin
I don't
app?
know what it is, but I'm totally on board with it.
I think we should,
it's
yeah.
an app that, like, if you can record bird songs, and it tells you which birds are nearby. So it recognizes the sounds, and then it tells you what you have. Or if you take a picture of a bird you don't recognize, it will tell you everything about that bird. So I use that app. I mean, I've taken up a lot of space and memory on my phone because of all the recordings of the birds. But it's such a joy to sit and watch the birds. I mean, it's just a lovely way to spend time. Of course, yes.
Yeah.
I saved a little woodpecker the other day that hit our window and sat outside with it and nursed it, and then it lived. And I feel now like it's, it's my woodpecker, and every woodpecker that comes to my feeder, I think, is that woodpecker. So yes, I do talk to them a lot.
Well,
I love
Karma,
it.
I loved how you talked about crows. Like, I have always heard that they're very smart, but I didn't know that they were capable of doing. What did you write? They can build tools, remember people's faces. They can pass lessons on to their young. Like, I love the interaction between Rowan and this bird. And, there was a point, they were talking about the white feather, and it kept coming back. And I thought, before you actually wrote it, I thought, is this a crow from the same family that Eddie knew? That's what I was thinking. I thought, are these like, and I just thought, wow. I was just fascinated.
In my mind, it is.
I mean,
in my mind,
okay.
it's an offspring of that crow, but it may not be. But as I was writing it, I was like, I want this to be true.
You kind of had that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe it to be true because my mom said that I don't know necessarily all my siblings. I grew up in the country, so I've been feeding the crows for as long as I can remember. And so I don't feed them in the city, but I do talk to the ones that might fly by my balcony. But every time I go home, I will call out to the crows and I'll feed them some scraps, and they do come and they caw at me. And I believe that it's just a different generation of them.
Yeah. And they can pass the knowledge of people's faces from one generation to the next. I mean, it isn't just like they pass down information about being a crow in the wild and how to be smart about building a tool if you need to get to food or to water. they can actually pass information along like that about people's faces. So I don't know. I mean, who knows how they do this, but I think they're just so amazingly brilliant. And they don't, I'm looking at a little yellow finch right now who's so pretty and bright yellow. And, the crows don't get the same because they're all black and they have a very rough sounding song, but they're pretty amazing. I loved researching the bird stuff and about the trees. All of that was just such a joy for me while I was writing the book.
Yeah, there's so many great things, like the pages where it's like, about the sun salutations, the pineapple upside down cake, and, just the powerful.
Well, those are from my childhood. I mean, my mom
so amazing
pineapple upside down cake, and my dad used to make us go out and my sister and I do 10 sun salutations every morning, which we never wanted to do, but we did them anyway because it made him happy. So a lot of those things I pulled from my own, those in the 70s when I was doing those things with my family.
Love that. Now, this book obviously is a lot about self-discovery for both characters, Rowan and Eddie. And when we come to find, we come to the end with everything with Eddie, like talking about how we connected to these characters, I started crying in those final moments. I really felt that emotion. You feel that this woman and her life and how it kind of all ended up. Was there any level of self-discovery for you while writing this book?
Oh, so much. I mean, I really feel like I learned a lot from both Rowan and Eddie, and even Jess. I came to that place because I think that after COVID and we were so isolated and everything went online. And then there was this sense like, well, this is now the way the world is, and we're all going to stay online and have to be connected in this way. And you miss those interactions, those personal interactions with people. And so with Rowan's timeline and what was going on with her, I really had that discovery of like, this is not how I want to do it. I don't want to feel like I have to be online all the time and that's where I live my life, because that is not where I live my life. I live it offline. And so for me having the opportunity to go between those women, and as Rowan kind of came into her own confidence and independence, and then having Eddie there to guide that for her. But, I was learning through Eddie as I was writing Eddie. I was learning some of that, like be what it means to be a wild woman and take up space, and what that can look like for me, for my daughter. It was a whole journey through this book. It was really like quite a emotional book for me to write, because I was experiencing a lot of that and asking myself a lot of important questions about what's important to me and what I want, this next phase of my life to look like. So yeah, it was a journey.
Mm-hmm. Quite the journey.
And Karma, have you ever known someone to change their identity like Eddie did, to go from Edith to Eddie? I mean, after her son tragically died. Yeah, I thought that was really interesting to me. Like, she went as Edith, she went and had a sit-in at that publishing company that was run by men, but the books, the magazine is about women. Why aren't women working here? And then she,
which is real. That is real. That's a real.
I wondered about that.
Thing that happened. Yeah.
A sit-in, because sit-ins were like really big back then.
They
were trying to make change.
Yeah. So I just inserted her, into a real historical event in that case.
Right.
But she did a complete 180 on her life, and
yeah.
I don't know anyone who has done a complete 180. I do know a lot of people who have made really drastic changes in their life for a variety of reasons, and just decided, it's time to do something different. It's time to, and it's never too late to do something different. I didn't start writing until I was 40. And so my first book published was at 41. So I had a whole career prior to that. So this is sort of like my, back half of my life now. Yeah.
And I love the Dear Me letter. where the women in the camp are instructed to write a letter to themselves and then read it a year later, to see what you could accomplish. Have you ever done that? It really intrigued me.
I do it every
I would like
year.
to do.
And in fact, there is an online thing called, I think it's called futureme.org. And you go in and you write yourself a letter about, what you hope to be true the next year when you open that letter. And then this Future Me will send it to you on that date. And so you forget all about it. And then you get an email that says, Future Me has a letter for you from you. And you open it up and you read all the things that you were thinking about and hoping for. So I've been doing that every year for a number of years.
Oh, I love that.
Okay, we're going to start that. We're going to start writing our letter
should do
today.
it. It's really great to see actually like the intention. When you have intention and you're like, this is what I would like to be true. I try to write it as like, this is already true, when I open that letter, and just the intention of the thing. It's amazing how close it is a lot of the time.
Wow. Okay, we're going to do that, and then we're going to look up birding retreats for badass women that we can attend.
There was a real Camp Calloway. Right?
I know.
Yeah.
So, Karma, we obviously love the book, What Wild Women Do. Such a great novel, great characters. I think two of us read it in a day. We loved it that much. What's next for you? What are you kind of working on, or that you can tell us about?
Well, I actually am just working on a holiday rom-com, which is like just a whole other side that I get to play with that's not out until October 2025. I'm writing that one under a pen name. So that's just sort of like a fun, just being able, I'm in Christmas in July, which is sort of weird, but it's also a good time. And I just wrote a feminist horror called The Mother.
Really?
And it will be out in 2026. So yeah, I'm just like experimenting and playing, and I love reading horror, so it was great fun for me to write, and of course it's feminist.
Ooh, love that.
Yeah.
We look forward to reading that. I think we've read some of your previous holiday rom-coms as well, so always exciting for us as well to get those books.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, you know what? Thank you so much for reading the book, and I'm really glad you loved it. It was a special book for me to write, so it's always nice to hear that it has resonated with people who have read it, with women. Yeah.
No.
Thanks again so much for your time today, Karma. And we'll send you the link to the podcast with the interview to the publicist when it's ready to go. And again, thanks so much for your time today.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, and I hope you have a great day.
You too.
Thank you, Karma.
Bye. Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
And thanks to you for listening to our Relaxing Reads podcast. Our next book is Colleen Hoover's It Ends With Us. So read along with us, and we'll soon share our thoughts on our next Relaxing Reads podcast. Have a good one.
Thank you for kicking back and relaxing with us. We hope you'll join us again on Relaxing Reads.